The entire city knew her name long before they ever saw her face. Aria Valenti, daughter of Victor Valenti, the billionaire whose decisions shaped skylines, markets, and industries across 3 continents. He was a man who could solve the most complicated global problems with a phone call. Except one. His own daughter, Aria, was not just difficult. She was legendary. People spoke about her in hushed tones, like she was a myth or a warning parents gave to misbehaving children. Stories spread everywhere from the mansion, staff, to boardroom. Executives who had seen her throw tantrums capable of freezing even her. Father's iron nerves in the Valenti mansion. There was an unspoken rule: don't get too close to the girl. No one said it out loud. Yet everyone followed it. She had gone through 12 nannies in 3 years. 5 tutors quit within a week. 1 housekeeper lasted 4 hours, a record, the staff joked. About with nervous laughter. It wasn't just her behavior. It was the unpredictability. One moment she would be silent, withdrawn, staring out from her balcony at the world below with cold detachment. The next, she would explode, screaming, throwing objects, locking herself in rooms, or running through the massive marble halls with a fury no one could understand. Victor Valenti spent millions on child psychologists, private behavioral specialists, emotional development experts. Yet nothing worked. It was almost ironic. A man who negotiated billion-dollar deals and ended global disputes with his diplomacy couldn't speak to his own daughter for more than 2 minutes without her shutting down at the mansion's staff hall. Every new hire would hear the same speech. "She is not evil," the head butler would say quietly. "She is hurting. But we do not know why." Still, despite the warnings, no one stayed long enough to find out. One rainy morning, a trembling young nanny stood at the front door clutching her suitcase. It was barely sunrise. "What happened?" one of the guards asked. "She threw a teapot at me because I told her breakfast was ready," the nanny whispered, her voice shaking. "Missed my head by an inch." The guard didn't look surprised. He simply sighed and helped her carry the luggage out, like he had done many times before. Inside, the mansion looked beautiful: tall crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, walls lined with artwork. More than some countries' annual budgets, but the beauty ended where Aria's presence began. The hallway outside her bedroom was always a battlefield: broken toys, shattered picture frames, claw marks on wooden doors, ink stains on imported carpets, a modern palace ruled by chaos. But the strangest part wasn't her rage. It was her silence afterward, after every outburst. Hours later, she would be found curled in a corner, knees hugged to her chest, hair covering her face, as if the entire world exhausted her, like a storm that feared its own thunder. Victor often stood at her door, watching her, helpless. He wasn't afraid of her anger. He could handle anger. What terrified him was the emptiness in her eyes. There was something he wasn't saying, something no one had been able to understand, something buried so deep that every attempt to reach it only pushed her further away and the world. Notice every magazine headline, every gossip column, every whisper in elite circles painted Aria as a spoiled, uncontrollable rich girl. People forgot she was a child, a lonely one still. The billionaire did not give up. He announced new rules in the mansion. No staff member should argue with Aria. No one should approach her unless she asked. No one should try to discipline her. He believed protecting her from emotional triggers would help, but it only built thicker walls. One afternoon, when Aria was 11, she stood at the grand staircase balcony overlooking the staff preparing the dining hall. Her expression was unreadable, a strange mix of longing and bitterness. She watched the staff laugh softly among themselves, a laughter she had never been part of, not because they excluded her, but because she had never been taught how to join in. A housekeeper noticed her and stiffened, lowering her gaze instantly. Aria's jaw tightened. Every look she received from adults carried the same emotion: fear. It shaped her worldview. If everyone feared you, maybe you were something to fear. So she acted the part that night. She ripped her father's expensive art books apart when he canceled a business. Dinner to spend time with her? The intentions never mattered to her. Only the emotions she didn't know how to handle. By the time she turned 13, Victor had accepted a painful truth. There was no one left to try. Her behavior became mansion folklore. Stories of the impossible daughter were whispered in every servant's room, every corporate elevator, and every charity gala, but everything changed one Sunday afternoon, when a girl in a simple black apron and a soft, steady smile served coffee to the billionaire and unknowingly walked into the storm no one else dared to enter. A waitress.ordinary.com, unaware, and fate was quietly preparing the moment, and these two opposite worlds would collide, changing both of their lives forever. Maya Reyes had never stepped inside a billionaire's world. She had seen it only from a distant sparkling towers, tinted luxury cars, private security at every door. To her, that world felt like another planet, one she could only observe from the cracks of her everyday life. Her life was simple, painfully simple. Every morning began the same way. 4:45 a.m. alarm. 5 a.m. make instant coffee. 5:15 a.m. quietly tiptoe out of the apartment so she wouldn't wake her younger brother. 5:40 a.m. first bus. 6:15 a.m. second bus. T-Dan a.m. arrive at Cedar Lane Cafe and put on her apron. She had lived for two things: her brother, Lucas, a shy 10-year-old who still struggled with panic attacks, and her determination to never let him feel the type of abandonment she once did. Their mother had left years ago. Their father had 2 jobs until he got sick, and now Maya was the only steady income. She dropped out of college to support the family, not because she wanted to, but because life didn't give her another choice. Yet, despite everything, Maya was different from most people who lived under pressure. She didn't break. She didn't lash out. She didn't become bitter. Life had pushed her to her limits so many times that she had developed a strange, unshakable calmness, the kind of quiet strength that made people instantly trust her. Even customers at the cafe noticed it. Maya, you should be a counselor. Maya, how are you always so patient? Maya, you're too gentle for this job. She always smiled and said the same thing. I've survived worse. Her manager adored her. Customers praised her, and even the cafe's grumpy owner softened around her. Maya had a way of soothing chaos with a single steady breath, but she herself never believed she was anything special to her. She was just a girl trying to keep life together with duct tape and hope. That Sunday afternoon, the cafe was strangely quiet, rare for weekends. Maya was wiping tables when the bell above the door chimed softly. She didn't look up at first. It was probably another regular, but the silence that followed made her turn. A man in a perfectly tailored black suit had walked in. Not the expensive kind of rich, but the powerful kind of rich. The kind whose presence shifted the air around him. His hair was streaked with gray. His jaw was sharp, and his eyes carried a lifetime of fatigue behind a shell of discipline. Maya recognized him instantly. Victor Valenti, the billionaire, the man whose name appeared on skyscrapers, magazines, and business channels, the man everyone in the city whispered about, but he didn't walk with the arrogance of a billionaire. He walked like someone carrying an invisible weight. He quietly chose a small corner table, somewhere he could blend into silence. Maya approached him with professional calm. Good afternoon, sir. Would you like the menu? He looked up. For a moment, something odd happened. His eyes softened, as if her presence steadied him. No menu, he said quietly. Just a black coffee. His voice was tired. Not physically, emotionally. Maya nodded and walked away, but she felt something was off. She didn't know why, but she could read people better than she read textbooks, and Victor Valenti, like a man who hadn't slept in years, as she prepared the coffee. Her coworker whispered sharply, "Are you crazy? Don't talk too much to him." "That's the Valenti guy." "I know," Maya whispered back. "Everyone says he's impossible. He fired an entire catering team last month because they irritated his daughter." Maya frowned. She didn't like workplace gossip. Maybe they did something wrong, she murmured. Her coworker rolled his eyes. You don't understand rich people? Especially their kids. Maya didn't respond. She believed people always had reasons, even for the worst behaviors. She carried the coffee to his table. As she set it down, she noticed his hands were shaking slightly, not from age, but from stress. Are you all right? She asked softly before she could stop. Herself, no waitress would dare ask a billionaire such a personal question, but Maya wasn't a typical. Waitress. Victor looked at her, really looked, most. People treated him like money or authority, but this girl saw something different. Man breaking under pressure? He stopped, as if forgetting how to speak about himself. Then he exhaled. My daughter, he murmured. I don't know how to help her anymore. Maya blinked, surprised he answered so honestly. I'm sorry, she said gently. Must be very difficult. He stared at her for a long moment. She wasn't afraid of him. She wasn't intimidated. She was simply, present. Most people walk away when she's mentioned, Victor said. Maya's smile was small but sincere. Then maybe they've never tried to understand her. It was such a simple sentence. But it hit Victor with the force of truth. For years, specialists, staff, and even friends treated his daughter like a problem to be solved, not a person to be understood. Victor studied Maya with a quiet intensity, as if he had just stumbled upon something he'd been searching for a very long time. It took him nearly a full minute to speak again. What is your name? Maya, she said. He nodded slowly, committing it to memory. 10 minutes later, his phone rang. He answered, listened, then stood up abruptly. I have to go, he said. My daughter? She had another episode. His voice cracked. Maya felt a pull in her chest. Empathy, not pity. She handed him the paper cup. Take this with you. Hesitated. No, I shouldn't, please. You look like you need it. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, a bridge forming from one life to another. Victor left quickly, but an hour later, he returned, storming in, looking directly at her, as if the world had cornered him and she was his only lifeline. Maya said breathlessly, I need your help. Her heart skipped. Sir, I'm just a waitress. No, he said firmly. You're exactly what my daughter needs. Before she could process anything, he said the words that would change her life forever. Come with me. Even if it's just for one day. My daughter, Arya. She listened to your voice. She had never met the girl, never seen the mansion, never imagined stepping into a billionaire's world. But fate had already chosen her path, and this was the moment her quiet life ended. And a storm waited for her on the other side of the mansion gates. The ride to the Valenti mansion felt unreal. Maya sat in the back seat of the sleek black sedan. Her fingers tangled nervously in her apron strings. The driver barely spoke, but he kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror, curious, confused. Maybe even impressed that a simple waitress had been summoned by Victor Valenti himself when the gates opened. Maya felt her breath catch. The mansion wasn't just big. It was massive, like a museum, a palace, and a fortress merged into one. Tall, iron gates. Manicured gardens, fountains carved from white stone. And security guards who observed her as if she were stepping into a restricted world. The car stopped at the entrance. Victor was already waiting. He looked even more exhausted than before's red. Shoulders heavy, his breathing unsteady like someone who had been fighting a battle no one could see. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. I know I asked for something unreasonable. Maya shook her head. You asked for help? It's never unreasonable. He didn't smile, but his eyes softened for a moment. Then he turned toward the door. There's something you need to know before you meet her. Maya listened carefully. This morning, Arya pushed a vase and shattered. When a housekeeper tried to clean it, she threw paint on her. When the headmaid approached, Arya locked herself in her room and threatened to jump from the balcony if anyone came closer. Maya froze. Jump? A child? Victor exhaled shakily, as if even saying the words drained him. She didn't mean it, he added quickly. At least I hope she didn't. She just loses control. Maya placed a hand gently on his arm. A simple gesture. A human one. She's scared, Maya murmured. Not angry? She stared at her in surprise. How do you know? Because children don't destroy things unless something inside them feels destroyed first. Victor swallowed hard. He had heard 1,000 theories, 100 diagnoses, endless analyses. But no one had ever spoken about his daughter with such simple, piercing clarity. He gestured toward a grand hallway. "She's in the East Wing, room 14. As Maya walked down the endless marble corridor, she passed staff members huddled together, whispering nervously, "Is that her? Why did he bring a stranger? She won't last an hour." Maya didn't respond. She understood fear. She had seen it in her brother. When he had panic attacks, she had lived it in her childhood. But she also understood something else. You don't run from broken. People dot you, sit with them until the storm. Passes, she reached the tall, white door with gold trim. Room 14, before she knocked. Victor called out softly. She may throw things, or yell, or hide. "Please don't take anything personally," Maya exhaled. "Won't?" Victor stepped back. "This is as far as she lets me. Go." Something inside Maya twisted at that. Eh? Father who wasn't allowed? Near his own child, she gently knocked silence. She knocked again, still nothing. Slowly, she pushed the door open. The room was enormous. With high ceilings, soft pastel walls, shelves overflowing with untouched toys, and a balcony draped in white curtains. And in the middle of the chaos, Aria Valente stood barefoot, hair wild, eyes blazing. She was holding a jar of ink. And the moment she saw Maya, she tightened her grip as if ready to throw it. Maya froze in the doorway. Aria's glare was sharp enough to cut. "Glass, go away," the girl hissed. Her voice wasn't childish. It was sharp, wounded, defensive. Maya noticed the paint splatters on the floor, the torn papers, the broken lamp, the heavy breathing of a child trying to look powerful while drowning inside. "I'm not here to tell you what to do," Maya said calmly. Aria's eyes narrowed. Maya stepped inside anyway. Aria raised the ink jar, higher, threatening. "Don't," Maya said softly. "It'll stain the carpet." Aria blinked. She hadn't expected that answer. Adults usually said, "Stop. Put that down. Don't you dare." No one cared about the carpet. They cared about controlling her, but Maya cared about something else entirely, she continued. "You'll get it on your hands too. It's really hard to wash off." Aria's threatening posture faltered just a fraction. Her hand trembled, not with anger, with exhaustion. "How did you get in?" the girl spat. "Who are you?" "Maya," she said simply. "I serve coffee." Aria blinked again. "What?" Maya shrugged. "Your dad ordered one, and I brought it." "You're a waitress?" Aria scoffed. "Why are you here?" "I don't need you." Maya smiled softly. "I know." Aria's face twisted confusion mixed with frustration. People always came to fix her. People always wanted something from her. People always tried to tell her who she was. But this girl, the stranger, didn't demand anything. She walked toward the balcony window. Aria tensed. "Stop. Don, tea? Touch anything?" "I'm not touching anything," Maya replied, keeping her distance. "I just want to see the view." "The view," Aria repeated, thrown off. "It's your room," Maya said. "You must like the view if you spend so much time here." Aria blinked at her. No one had ever tried to understand why she stayed in her room, not even her father. "Why are you calm?" Aria suddenly snapped. "Everyone else gets scared." Maya turned to face her fully. "Why do you want them to be scared?" Aria stiffened. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then she whispered something so faint that Maya barely heard it. "Because if they're scared, they stay away." Maya's heart clenched. This wasn't a monster. This was a child trying to protect herself. It's the only way she knew how. Maya stepped closer, slow, gentle. UNTHREATENING. Aria flinched. "No." One came closer without yelling first. No one stepped into her space without fear, but Maya stopped a safe distance away. "How about this?" Maya said quietly. "I'll stay, only until you tell me to leave." "No one else decides, just you?" Aria stared at her. Stunned. Control. She was offering her control. For the first time. Someone wasn't fighting her chaos. They were respecting it. Aria lowered the ink jar slightly. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that?" Maya smiled softly. because you look like you've been trying to talk for a very long time. No one has heard you." The jar slipped from Arya's hand. It hit the carpet with a soft thud, but didn't break. For a child who spent years screaming to be heard, someone had finally listened before she ever said a word. Arya's eyes shimmered anger, its confusion, and a raw, aching loneliness twisting together. But for the first time, she didn't push someone away. Maya stepped closer, very slowly, very gently. And Arya didn't run, not this time. The first clash was supposed to end like all the others, with screaming, breaking, running. But instead, it ended with silence. A fragile, delicate silence. The kind that marks the beginning of something impossible for the first time in years. Arya Valente wasn't yelling. She wasn't breaking anything. She wasn't threatening to run away or slam the door. She just stood there, staring at the strange, Tom waitress who had walked into her storm without fear. Maya didn't push, didn't question, didn't rush. She simply waited still, steady. Patient. Arya didn't know what to do with that. People always rushed her, always talked over her, always tried to fix her. But this girl was doing the one thing Arya had never experienced from any adult. She was giving her space, but not abandoning her. Arya slowly walked toward her bed and sat down back stiff, chin raised, pretending confidence she didn't feel. Maya remained standing, hands loose at her sides, voice soft. "Do you want me to sit?" she asked. Arya didn't answer, but her shoulders moved just a tiny shrug, hesitant, unsure. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. So, Maya walked to the balcony curtains and sank gently onto the small ottoman near the window. Not too close, not too far, just enough for Arya to choose if she wanted distance or closeness. Arya's eyes tracked her every movement. Suspicious, curious, guarded. Minutes passed in silence. Most adults couldn't survive 10 seconds of silence with Arya. They'd flutter with questions. "What's wrong? Why did you do that? Are you upset? Tell me how to help." Key. She simply observed the room with quiet interest, like she was discovering a new world. "You like drawing?" Maya said softly. Noticing the scattered art supplies on the floor, Arya's eyes sharpened instantly. "Don't touch my things." "I'm not," Maya replied gently. "I just noticed the colors. They're nice." Arya narrowed her eyes as if searching for sarcasm. There was none. A long pause followed. Then Arya muttered, almost defensively, "I like blue." Maya smiled. "It suits you?" Arya blinked, thrown off again. Compliments usually annoyed her because they felt fake, exaggerated, manipulative. But this one was simple, honest. She rubbed her wrist nervously, eyes darting to the window. "Everyone says I'm too much," Arya muttered. Her voice was low, fragile, cracking around the edges. Maya tilted her head slightly. "Too much what?" Arya's throat tightened. She wasn't used to explaining herself. Explaining required trust. Trust required safety. Something she'd never had. Too loud. Too angry. Too emotional. Too difficult. She swallowed hard. Too broken. Maya's heart clenched. "Do you think you're broken?" she asked gently. Arya didn't answer. Her lower lip trembled, barely noticeable. But Maya saw it. Children who felt too much often hid it behind anger. Anger was easier. Anger was safe. Silence. It stretched again. Heavy but meaningful. Maya finally spoke. Voice steady as a heartbeat. "You're not broken. Overwhelmed?" Arya's breath hitched. Nobody had ever used that word. Overwhelmed? Not. Spoiled? Not dramatic. Not unstable. Not. Impossible. Overwhelmed. As if her feelings had a reason. As if she wasn't the problem, just hurting. Arya looked away quickly, blinking fast to hide the wetness forming in her eyes. "Why do you talk like that?" she whispered. "Like what?" "You understand?" Maya hesitated. She hadn't planned to share anything about her own life, but something about Arya's trembling voice stripped away her walls. "Because I've felt like that," Maya said softly. Arya's eyes shot back to her. "You?" she scoffed. "You're calm. You're normal." Maya smiled sadly. "Calm doesn't mean life is easy." Arya frowned. Confused, Maya slipped off her bracelet, the worn Faded one she always wore and held it loosely in her hand. "I got this when my mom left," Maya said quietly. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't explain anything. She was just gone. Arya froze. She knew abandonment. Deeply. "I used to scream," Maya continued. "Throw things. Break things. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to be heard." Arya stared at her, wide-eyed, breath shallow. For the first time, someone's story didn't sound like pity or a lecture. It sounded like recognition. "So I learned to breathe," Maya whispered. "To listen, to watch, before reacting. To understand people before judging them." Arya swallowed hard. "What if understanding doesn't help? It always helps," Maya murmured. "But it takes time." Arya hugged her knees to her chest. "You'll leave," she muttered. "Everyone leaves." Maya's expression softened. "I told you earlier. You decide when I leave. Not me. Not your father. Only you." Arya's breath trembled. Nobody had ever given her that power. Her life was controlled by schedules, tutors, guards, roles yet. The one thing she never had control over was people. They came, they left, always without her permission, but this waitress, this stranger, was offering something priceless. Choice? Arya didn't know how to process the feelings swelling in her chest, half fear, half hope. She wiped her face quickly with the sleeve of her shirt. "I don't want you to go," she whispered. Maya's voice remained warm. "I'm here then." A moment passed. A long, fragile, beautiful moment. Then Arya did something no one expected. She stood up from the bed, walked slowly across the room, and sat down on the floor near Maya's feet, close, but not touching, like a wild creature inching nearer. It's a safe place for the first time. Maya didn't move, didn't reach out, didn't push. She simply existed, quiet, steady, dependable. Arya gently brushed her finger against the carpet, tracing invisible shapes. "Can I ask you something?" she murmured. "Of course. Will you? Talk to me again tomorrow." Maya's chest tightened. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if Victor would fire her. She didn't know how long she could stay. But she knew this. Arya needed her, not for discipline, not for control, not for behavior management, for connection. "For as long as you want," Maya whispered. Arya leaned her head ever so slightly toward Maya's knee, not touching, but close enough that Maya felt the trust forming like a fragile glass thread. It wasn't a hug, but it was the closest Arya had come to one in years. Outside the room, Victor stood unseen in the hallway. He had come to check on them. It saw something he had never witnessed before. His daughter. Calm, quiet, safe, with someone who understood her. Victor covered his mouth with his hand. Overwhelmed not by fear, but by relief so intense it made his knees weak. Inside the room, Arya whispered, "Maya?" "Yes, thank you for not being scared of me." Maya smiled softly. "You're not someone to fear, Arya. You're someone to understand." And for the first time in her life, Arya believed it. When the heavy doors of Morgan Hall closed behind them, silence filled the corridor. A silence thick with emotions that neither of them had words for. Alina kept her hands firmly clasped, every muscle tight, every breath steady, but her heart raced like she had just survived a storm. Aurora walked beside her with soft, careful steps. Nothing like the raging tornado she had been just hours ago. She didn't say a word, but she stayed close, almost too close. It was the first time Alina realized how small Aurora actually was beneath all that anger, and how painfully lonely. They reached the private terrace overlooking the entire estate, golden lights glowing below. The night calm, the air cool and quiet. Aurora stopped. "Alina," her voice cracked. She sounded nothing like the billionaire's daughter who threw tantrums powerful enough to make staff resign in waves. "Why didn't you leave? Why did you stay after everything I said?" Alina exhaled slowly. The question she knew was coming, because she said softly, "You never hated me. You were afraid I'd be like everyone else?" Aurora looked up, eyes wide, almost frightened. "Everyone leaves," she whispered. "My last therapist. She left. My teachers left. Even my mother." Her voice broke completely. Alina didn't comment. She didn't interrupt. She didn't pity. She simply said, "I'm not leaving because of your anger. Anger just means you feel something too deeply. Aurora swallowed hard. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not gently. Not honestly. Not without fear. And that's when she said the words that Alina would remember for the rest of her life. "You're the first person who ever stayed." Even when it was hard too. Alina's throat tightened. She had been many things in her life: waitress, helper, caretaker, but in that moment, she realized she was something new for Aurora. A constant, a safe place. A person who didn't run. Aurora wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver bracelet with a single charm shaped like a tiny star. "My mother gave me this when I was 10, Aurora said quietly. "She said it was for the person I'd trust the most one day." Her fingers trembled. "I want you to have it." Alina froze. This wasn't a gift. This was a world opening. "Aurora?" she whispered. "This is yours." "You don't have to, I know." Aurora stepped forward, voice steady now. "But you did the impossible today. You made me feel understood. You made me feel seen." Her breath shook. "Nobody has ever done that." A single tear slid down her cheek. "And if I don't give this to you now, I never will." Alina slowly extended her hand. Aurora placed the bracelet into her palm gently, deliberately, like passing a fragile truth she had protected for years. The star charm glinted under the terrace. Lights dot, it felt heavier than gold. It felt like trust, a rare commodity in a world where Aurora Morgan had learned to trust no one. Alina finally asked, "What do you need from me moving forward?" Aurora didn't hesitate. "Teach me," she said, "how to control this storm inside me. How to be someone my father won't give up on." She looked away in shame. "How to be better." Alina smiled for the first time that night. "Nat," she said, "I can do." Aurora took a shaky breath. "You think I can change?" "I don't think," Alina replied. "I know." For a moment, the world stood still. The billionaire's daughter.
Okay.
And the waitress no one expected would stay. Two people from completely different lives. Yet somehow exactly what the other needed, Aurora whispered. "Thank you." Alina squeezed her shoulder gently. "Tomorrow," she said with confidence, "we start fresh." Aurora nodded, determined, hopeful, humbled. For the first time in years, she felt like she wasn't fighting the world alone, and for the first time in her life, Alina felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. But neither of them knew that this moment, this single night, was only the beginning. Because while Alina thought she was helping a troubled girl heal, she had no idea the billionaire self had been watching everything, and he was about to enter the story in a way that would change both their lives forever. The next morning, the sun rose over the Morgan estate like gold spilling across glass. Staff members moved quietly through the halls, whispering about the impossible. Aurora didn't scream at anyone today. She had breakfast. Peacefully. What happened last night? Word traveled fast, and before noon, everyone knew one thing: something had changed, but no one knew why. Only one person intended to find out. Alina stood near the balcony of the indoor garden, waiting for Aurora to join her for their first session. She had a notebook ready, a tray of tea, and the same calm determination she carried last night. Then a deep voice echoed from behind Alina. She turned, and there he was. Richard Morgan, one of the wealthiest men in the country. Man whose presence alone could silence an entire boardroom today. That same presence was centered on her. He looked composed, sharp, readable, like a man constantly calculating 1,000 things at once. "Good morning," Sir Alina said politely. He didn't respond to the greeting. Instead, he studied her not with suspicion, but with curiosity. The quiet, dangerous kind. "My daughter," he began, "was a different person at breakfast." Alina remained silent, letting him continue. "She apologized to a maid she yelled at last week." His expression did not change, but his voice carried a weight she'd never heard before. "She asked for a different dress, without screaming, without breaking anything." He paused, and she sat with me for 8 minutes. 8 uninterrupted minutes. Lena inhaled slowly. "That's good to hear, sir." "Good." He stepped closer. "It's a miracle. Another step, and miracles. His tone hardened. Do not happen without a reason. Alina felt the pressure. Not fear, but the awareness that this was a man who rarely trusted people, especially someone who suddenly had influence over his daughter. So, he said, I want the truth. His eyes locked onto hers. What exactly did you do to her last night? Alina held her ground. I listened. Richard raised an eyebrow. Listened. Yes, sir? And I told her she wasn't broken. Just misunderstood. For the first time, a crack appeared in his expression. Subtle, but real. She told you that? He asked quietly. No, Alina replied. I saw it. Silence. A heavy, assessing silence. Richard Morgan was not a man used to being surprised, but Alina's answer struck something in him. Something he hid behind layers of power, discipline, and responsibility. You gained her trust in one night, he said. Something professionals, educators, and specialists failed to do in years. Alina didn't boast. She didn't take credit. She simply said, Aurora opened the door herself. I just walked through it. Another silence. This time, Richard's gaze softened. Just a fraction. Walk with me, said. It wasn't a request. They walked through the glass corridor, overlooking the gardens. Sunlight reflected off the marble floors, giving everything a quiet glow. I need to know, Richard said, whether you can continue doing what you did last night. Alina nodded. I can. Good, he answered. Because I'm going to test you. He stopped walking, turning fully toward her. Not aggressive, not threatening, just intentional. There is something you need to understand, he said. My daughter is not just difficult, she is unpredictable. Lena already knew that, but she waited for him to finish. She has moments of brilliance and moments of chaos. His jaw tightened. I love her more than anything on this earth, but I cannot always reach her. She believes I've given up. Alina saw the truth beneath his control, the fear of a father who didn't know how to fix a breaking bond. She thinks you expect too much from her, Lena said gently. Richard exhaled harshly. She told you that? She didn't need to. He studied her again. You see things most people miss, he said. That can be a gift. Or a threat. Lena didn't flinch. I'm here to help her, sir. Nothing more. A long pause. Then Richard finally said the words she wasn't expecting. I'm giving you 1 week. Alina blinked. 1 week? 1 week, he repeated. To show me that last night wasn't luck. That you can help Aurora stabilize, communicate, and manage her emotional storms. He stepped even closer. If you succeed, he looked toward Aurora's wing of the house. You will have a permanent position in this family. With full authority to guide her, Lena's breath caught permanent authority, a future she never imagined. If I fail? She asked quietly. Richard didn't smile. You won't, he said. Not after what I saw last night. He turned away. But the test starts now. As he walked off, Alina stood frozen for a moment, heart pounding. She had been hired as a waitress, then trusted as a companion. Now she was being tested. As the one person who might hold the key to Aurora Morgan's future. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was a turning point, and somewhere down the hall, Aurora was waiting for her because, for the first time in her life, the billionaire's daughter had hope. And for the first time in Alina's life, she had something worth fighting for. Alina took a steadying breath before knocking gently on the carved white door of Aurora's room. She half expected yelling or the sound of something shattering. But instead she heard soft music, piano keys, almost whispering. A good sign? Come in, Aurora called. Her voice surprisingly calm. Alina entered and stopped. Aurora was sitting on the floor. Cross-legged, a sketchbook on her lap, colored pencils scattered like a quiet explosion of creativity around her. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, catching strands of her golden hair, making her look peaceful, almost unrecognizable from the furious girl from 2 nights ago. Aurora didn't look up. You're late, she said. Alina blinked. It's 2 minutes past 10. I know. Aurora shrugged. But I was excited. That single word, excited, meant everything. Alina sat across from her. What are we drawing today? Aurora finally looked up, and her eyes were shining. Not drawing, she said. Something else? She pulled a small box from behind her. Inside were 2 bracelets threaded, colorful, handmade. One blue, one pink. "I made these this morning," Aurora said, cheeks turning slightly pink. "One is for you. One is for me." Elena smiled. "This is beautiful." "Don't lose it," Aurora said quickly, trying to sound strict. "It's stupid, but I thought if we're starting fresh, we should match." "It's not stupid," Elena said softly. "It's thoughtful." Aurora looked down, touched but embarrassed. And that's when the storm began. Not from Aurora, from outside. A sudden crash of thunder shook the windows. Rain slammed against the glass and sheets. Wind howled through the trees outside the estate. Aurora flinched hard. "Elena, didn't miss it? Are you scared of storms?" she asked, gently. Aurora didn't answer. Her shoulders stiffened. Her breathing changed quick, shallow, uneven. Another crack of thunder. Aurora covered her ears. "Elena." "No, no, no." Her voice trembled. "Please don't make me stay here, please." Elena moved instantly, kneeling beside her. "Aurora," she said softly, "look at me." But Aurora couldn't. Her mind was spiraling, her body locked in panic. The storm outside wasn't just weather. It was a memory raw, painful, unresolved. Elena knew the signs. This wasn't anger. This wasn't defiance. This was fear. A deep-rooted fear Aurora had hidden behind all the walls, all the screaming. All the chaos. Thunder shook the room again. Aurora whimpered and curled inward. Shaking, Elena put a hand on her shoulder, gentle, grounding. "Aurora, breathe with me." "Oh, no, I can't," Aurora gasped. "Yes, you can," Elena whispered, her voice steady as stone despite the storm outside. "In and out." She breathed slowly, exaggerating the rhythm so Aurora could follow. Aurora tried and failed. She shook violently, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Elena," she choked, "don't leave me." Those words hit Elena like a punch to the chest. "I'm not leaving," she said, pulling Aurora into her arms. "I'm right here." For a long moment, they sat like that, Aurora, trembling, Elena, holding her, the storm raging outside but unable to reach them. Gradually, Aurora's breathing slowed, her muscles loosened, her hands unclenched. "Elena," she whispered, voice small, "I hate storms." "Why?" Elena asked softly. Aurora hesitated. Her throat tightened. "And then?" "When my mom left," she whispered, "it was raining." Elena closed her eyes. Of course. Of course the storm was more than thunder. Aurora continued, voice breaking. "She walked out the door, and I chased her, barefoot. I slipped on the steps and cried, but she didn't turn back. And every time it storms, I feel like I'm right there again." Elena felt Aurora clinging to her shirt, gripping so tightly it almost hurt. "I thought she left because I wasn't good enough," Aurora sobbed. "I still think that sometimes." Elena held her tighter. "Aurora," she murmured, "listen to me. Your mother leaving had nothing to do with you?" Aurora shook her head helplessly. "Then why didn't she stay?" "Because people break too," Elena said softly. "And sometimes they break in ways that have nothing to do with the people they love." Another tear slid down Aurora's cheek. "Elena," she whispered. "Am I broken?" Elena cupped her face gently, lifting her chin. "No," she said firmly. "You are not broken. You're hurt. And there's a difference." Aurora stared at hers, wide, vulnerable, trusting to for the first time, really trusting. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the room, Aurora's storm was finally calming. "Elena," she whispered, "don't ever leave me, please." Elena took Aurora's shaking hands and squeezed them. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "Not now." "Not ever?" Aurora leaned against her, exhausted, but safe, and as thunder rolled across the sky, Elena didn't realize just down the hall, the billionaire father was watching everything from a distance, listening, learning, and planning the next test. The storm quieted sometime after noon, but inside Aurora's room, the air still held traces of fear-like echoes lingering long after the sound had died. Aurora lay curled on the sofa, wrapped in a soft blanket. Her breathing had finally steadied. Her cheeks were still damp, her eyes red, but she wasn't shaking anymore. Elena sat beside her, not speaking, not pushing, just being there. And that presence, a quiet, unwavering presence, It meant more to Aurora than anything anyone had ever said to her. After a long silence, Aurora whispered, "Do you think I'm weak?" Lena turned toward her. "No, I think you're brave." Aurora frowned. "Brave?" I was terrified. "Brave?" Alina repeated. "Because you didn't hide it this time." Aurora swallowed deeply and wiped her nose in the most ungraceful, princess-like way possible. "I don't know how to stop it," she confessed. "The fear? The memories? It's like something grabs me and pulls me under." Lena nodded gently. "That's why I'm here. We'll work on it together." Aurora's fingers tightened around the blanket. "Promise. I promise." And just like that, Aurora closed her eyes, vague and trusting, resting steady for the first time in years. But the peace didn't last. Not for long. The door opened abruptly. Alina turned and froze. Richard Morgan stood in the doorway. He wasn't furious. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't demanding explanations. He looked shaken. Something Alina had never imagined seeing. His eyes went straight to Aurora, then to the trembling, hands peeking from the blanket, then back to Alina. "What happened?" he asked, voice low. Before Alina could speak, Aurora's eyes snapped open. She pushed herself upright, panic rushing back instantly. "Dad, please don't be mad." Richard stepped forward quickly, hands raised. "Aurora? No, not angry," but she didn't hear him. She scrambled off the sofa, grabbing for her sketchbook, tripping over her blanket in the process. Her breaths turned sharp, quick. Terrified Dad. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm trying. Alina moved to help her. But Aurora squeezed her eyes shut and covered her ears. "I'll do better, Dad. I promise. I'll be good. Just don't be mad." Richard froze. Every word hit him like a blow. "Aurora." His voice cracked just barely. "Why would you think I'm mad?" Aurora backed into the corner, her voice trembling. Because you always are when I mess up." And that was the breaking point. Not just for Aurora, but for Richard. Something inside him snapped not with anger, but with realization he had been protecting her, providing for her, structuring her life with the strictest care. But somewhere along the way, she had learned to fear him, not hate him. "Fear him," Richard stepped toward her slowly, his voice softer than Alina had ever heard. "Aurora, listen to me." She didn't move. "Aurora." His voice broke again. "I'm not here to punish you. I'm here because I've heard you crying." Aurora's chest heaved. "I wasn't crying. You were," he said. "I should have come sooner." Aurora's breath stopped. Richard continued, voice low, full of regret he had buried for years. "You're my daughter, my only child. And the storm outside doesn't scare me half as much as seeing you scared." Aurora looked up. The fear in her eyes cracked slightly. He stepped closer, and for the first time in years. "Aurora didn't flinch, sweetheart," he whispered. "I am not mad at you." Her lip trembled. "Not for this. Not for your fear. Not for your emotions. And not for being you." Aurora's knees buckled. Alina caught her just as she sank to the floor, sobbing into her hands. Richard knelt beside them awkwardly, stiffly. "Like a man learning how to be gentle after forgetting for too long, Dad?" Aurora gasped. "I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize," he murmured. "Not for needing comfort. Not to me." Aurora pressed her forehead to his shoulder and cried harder. Richard's eyes glistened only for a moment before he quickly wiped them. He looked at Alina, and in that look was something new. Not suspicion, not curiosity, dependence. He needed her. Aurora needed her. And for the first time, he knew it. "Alina," he said quietly, "don't leave her side today." "I won't," she replied. He nodded, emotion tightening his jaw. Because in this moment, Aurora's worst storm, Alina, became something neither of them expected. The anchor, the bridge, the hope, and it was only a matter of time before the world outside this room realized it too. The storm clouds drifted away by late afternoon, leaving soft light filtering into Aurora's room. But inside, the air still felt heavy, filled with things unsaid. Wounds exposed and emotions that had waited years to surface. Aurora sat between her father and Alina on the floor, wrapped in a blanket like fragile porcelain, finally allowed to crack. Her breathing had steadied, but her eyes were red and tired, her shoulders still trembling occasionally. Richard stayed beside her, not as the billionaire everyone feared, but as a father who finally realized how much fear lived inside his daughter. Alina watched quietly, giving them space but also guiding the moment like a steady hand on a stormy sea. After a long stretch of silence, Aurora whispered, "I didn't mean to cry in front of you." Richard shook his head. "You don't ever need to hide that from me." Aurora's gaze drifted downward. "You always look disappointed when I get emotional." Richard inhaled sharply, not in anger, in guilt. "I wasn't disappointed," he said quietly. "I was helpless. I didn't know how to reach you." Aurora swallowed hard, her voice cracking. "But it felt like you were angry." "I'm sorry." Richard said words Aurora hadn't heard from him in years. Maybe ever? "I'm sorry if I made you feel that way." "That was never my intention." Aurora bit her lip, fighting tears again. Alina moved closer and spoke gently. "Aurora, what do you wish your father understood about you?" Aurora hesitated, his chest rising and falling. Then she finally whispered the truth she'd never said aloud. "I'm not trying to be difficult. Just overwhelmed. All the time. When it gets too much, I panic. I yell. I push people away because it feels safer than being left behind." Richard's eyes softened, filled with a grief that had been gathering dust inside him. He reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. Aurora didn't, when his hand touched hers. She startled, but didn't withdraw. "Aurora," he said, voice breaking, "I don't want to leave you. I never have. Even when you're angry. Even when you think I don't understand." Her face crumpled. "Then why don't you stay with me? Why are you always busy? Always gone?" Richard's breath caught painfully, because that was the wound he'd ignored for far too long. "I thought," he said slowly, "giving you the best doctors, the best tutors, the best staff was enough. That if I worked harder, earned more, provided more, it would make you happy?" Aurora shook her head. "Didn't want all of that. What did you want?" he asked, almost afraid of the answer. Aurora's voice was a whisper. "You." Richard closed his eyes. Alina gently placed her hand on Aurora's back, grounding her as the truth settled between them like a fragile peace offering. "I didn't know," Richard finally said. "And that's my fault." Aurora stared down at her hands. "I don't know how to tell you." Lena's voice cut in softly. "A bridge between two broken halves. That's why we're going to learn. Together." Richard nodded slowly. "Yes. Together?" Aurora glanced between them. "But I mess up. A lot?" Alina smiled. "Everyone does. You don't understand?" Aurora insisted. "Sometimes I get so angry, I can't think. Or I say horrible things. I break stuff. I turn into this version of myself that even I hate." Alina gently lifted Aurora's chin so their eyes met. "That version of you isn't a monster," she said. "She's a girl who's drowning and doesn't know how to ask for help." Aurora blinked, because it was the first time anyone had described her chaos with compassion instead of judgment. Richard's voice softened further. "I should have helped you sooner." Aurora hesitated, then, timidly. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Richard froze, as if afraid the smallest movement would make her disappear. Then he slowly, carefully wrapped an arm around her. Aurora didn't pull away. Alina watched the moment with a warmth spreading through her chest. She had seen families fall apart. Rarely had she seen them begin to heal. After a few minutes, Aurora whispered, "So, what do I do now?" Alina answered before Richard could. "First," she said gently, "you've learned to name your feelings before they explode." Aurora nodded quietly. "And second," Alina continued, "you stop trying to heal alone." Aurora's eyes flickered up. "With you?" "Dad." Alina nodded. "Both of us." Richard squeezed Aurora's hand. "Always." For a brief moment, Aurora didn't look like the billionaire's complicated, misunderstood daughter. She looked like a girl who had been waiting her whole life for someone to stay. Alina exhaled, feeling the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders, but also the purpose. How do you heal a heart like Aurora's? You don't fix it, you walk with it. You teach it, You show it that storms don't last forever, and most of all, you prove you won't run when things get messy. But neither Alina nor Richard realized something. Healing Aurora would be the easy part. Protecting her from what was coming next would be the real challenge. The restaurant had long closed. Chairs were stacked, lights dimmed, and the soft hum of the dishwasher echoed from the back. Only 2 people remained in the main dining hall, Amira and Lena. Lena sat at a small corner table, her knees pulled to her chest, the fierce mask she wore all day completely gone. For the first time, Amira saw what was underneath. Not anger, not arrogance, not cruelty. Just a lonely girl. Amira quietly placed a warm cup of cocoa in front of her. Lena sniffed. "What's this supposed to do?" "Fix my life." "No," Amira said softly. "But maybe it can warm your hands for 5 minutes." Lena glared at her, then her face broke. Her lips trembled. Tears fell. "I hate everyone," she whispered. "No," Amira replied. "You're afraid everyone will leave. Do you push first?" Lena looked up slowly. No one had ever said that to her. Not her father, not her tutors, not security guards, not relatives. They all tiptoed around her like she was a bomb, but Amira didn't flinch. How do you know?" Lena asked in a tiny voice. Amira sat down beside her. "Careful but steady, because I used to be you," she said, "and someone once refused to give up on me." Lena stared at her, really stared, and in that moment, something cracked open inside her. A connection, a recognition, and for the first time since they met, Lena let someone in. Lena wiped her face. "My mother left when I was 8. Amira didn't react. She simply listened. She said she was coming back, but she didn't. She just disappeared." Lena swallowed hard. "And Dad, he tries to buy everything except the one thing I wanted." Her voice broke. "He thinks money fixes everything. That tutors, therapists, guards, they can all keep me under control, but no one listens. No one understands. I'm just a problem to be managed." "No," Amira said gently. "You're a person to be loved." Lena froze. Loved, a word she hadn't heard from anyone in years. Her eyes filled again, but this time, they weren't angry tears. Suddenly, the restaurant door burst open. Security guards rushed in, followed by Mr. Kazuki Ren, the billionaire father. Panic all over his face. "Lena, where are you?" Before she could answer, the guards tried to pull her away, assuming she was causing another scene, but Lena shocked them by shouting, "Stop! Don't touch me," talking to her. Everyone froze. Lena never talked like that, never defended anyone, never asked to stay, and Mr. Ren had no idea what to do. "Lena," he whispered, "are you okay?" Lena stood, walked toward her father, and instead of yelling, instead of throwing something, instead of running, she hugged him. A small, shaky, desperate hug. His eyes widened, his breath caught. Over Lena's shoulder, he looked at Amayar, and in that silent moment, he understood who had done the impossible. The next morning, the billionaire arrived earlier than usual. His footsteps echoed through the marble hallway, sharp, urgent, carrying a tension that made every staff member freeze for a moment. He had been watching everything quietly, but today, he wanted answers. He walked into the dining room, expecting the usual disaster. Clothes scattered, glass broken, the daughter screaming, Giles. Instead, he stopped in the doorway, stunned for the first time in years. His daughter was sitting calmly at the table, sunlight warming her face. Her hair was brushed. Her breakfast plate was neat. There was not a single broken item around her, and next to her was the waitress standing straight, hands behind her back, quietly observing, like she had been doing this her whole life. The billionaire blinked twice, genuinely confused. "What's happening?" muttered under his breath. He stepped inside slowly, most afraid to disturb the fragile peace he was witnessing. His daughter looked up and smiled gently. "Good morning, Daddy." The billionaire felt his chest tighten. She hadn't said good morning to him in months. He slowly turned to the waitress. "You?" he said softly. "What did you do?" The waitress felt his eyes studying her, searching for a trick. "A lie, a miracle." She bowed respectfully. I didn't do anything extraordinary, sir. I just listened. The billionaire stared at her for a long moment. Everyone else had tried. Force.orders.punishments.warnings.therapy.expensive specialists flown from across the world. Nothing worked. But this waitress, this young woman earning minimum wage in his mansion, somehow reached inside his daughter's broken world and pulled her into the light. He took a deep breath and sat beside his daughter. Are you all right, sweetheart? She nodded. Yes, I think I am. Her voice trembled, but it wasn't fear. It was relief. The billionaire looked around again, still trying to process the scene. Did she yell today? He asked carefully. No, sir, the waitress answered. Not once? Did she throw anything? No. Did she cry? Only when she talked about her mother. Billionaire lowered his head. That wound, the one he had tried to bury under wealth and distractions, was still bleeding. He looked at the waitress. Again? You talked to her about her mother. The waitress nodded. Double quotes, she needed someone who didn't treat her like a problem. She needed someone who treated her like a person. A long silence passed. The billionaire closed his eyes for a moment. Overwhelmed, you've done what entire teams of professionals couldn't, he whispered. The waitress shook her head. I didn't fix her, sir. She isn't broken. She was just lonely. The billionaire felt something crack inside him. Guilt, maybe? Regret? Or the realization that he had been so busy being powerful, he forgot to be present. He looked at the waitress with a mixture of respect and disbelief. You've changed my daughter, he said softly. And you've changed this home? The waitress began to speak, but he raised a hand gently. Not many people can bring peace into a house like this. But you did it with patience and heart. His daughter suddenly reached out and held his wrist, a gesture she hadn't done in over a year. Dad, she whispered. She's my friend. The billionaire's eyes softened, warmth replacing the cold armor he usually carried. He nodded slowly. Then I'm grateful, he said quietly. More than you can ever know, but deep inside him. A decision was forming, a decision that would change the waitress's life. Forever? The following days were nothing short of astonishing. It started with small things. The billionaire's daughter would come downstairs without slamming doors closed. She would sit at the breakfast table without knocking anything over. She would speak, not scream, not demand, just speak. The staff who once tiptoed around her like she was a ticking bomb now found themselves exchanging confused, hopeful glances whenever she walked by. But the credit for all of it went to the one person no one expected, the waitress, every morning. She arrived early, even earlier than her shift required, just to check on the girl, not as an employee, not out of fear, but because she genuinely cared. And the daughter could feel that for the first time in her life. She felt safe with someone. One afternoon, the daughter sat in the garden, a place she usually avoided because it reminded her too much of her mother. The leaves shimmered under the bright sun as she traced patterns in the grass with her fingers. The waitress approached slowly, ready to retreat if the girl wanted space. But instead, the daughter whispered, almost shyly, "Sit with me." The waitress sat down beside her. After a long silence, the girl spoke again, her voice quiet, but steady. "Do you think I'm a bad person?" The waitress's heart tightened. "No," she replied gently. "Think you were hurting." And nobody understood how to help. "My father didn't," the girl said, looking at the ground. "He tried," the waitress answered softly. "But sometimes people love deeply, yet still don't know how to show it." The girl took a shaky breath. "When my mom died, everything broke. I kept waiting for my dad to hold me, to ask if I'm okay. But he just buried himself in work. I felt invisible." The waitress didn't speak. She didn't interrupt. She let the girl cry, in a way no one had ever allowed her to. When the tears slowed, the girl wiped her face and whispered, "You're the only one who actually listens to me." The waitress placed a comforting hand over hers. "And I'll keep listening, for as long as you need." The transformation continued. She started drawing. Again, something she had stopped after her mother passed away. She ate meals without pushing the plates off the table. She apologized when she snapped. She laughed. Sound the mansion hadn't heard in so long that the staff would? Paused just to make sure it was real. The billionaire watched. Silently, from a distance, he saw his daughter. Walking beside the waitress, chatting about small things. He saw her handing over her broken bracelet and actually trusting the waitress to repair it. He saw her joining the kitchen staff for cookies, flour on her hands, giggling like a child who finally remembered what innocence felt like. Every moment was a reminder. His daughter was healing, and the waitress was the reason. One evening, as the sun dipped into shades of gold and orange, the daughter tugged on the waitress's apron. "I want to show you something." So led her to the art room, untouched since her mother's last painting. The girl hesitated at the door. Trembling, the waitress held her hand gently. Giving her silent courage, they walked inside together. Dust covered the tables. Canvas. Frames leaned against the wall, and in the center, her mother's unfinished painting still waited, frozen in time, like a wound that refused to close. The daughter moved toward it slowly. "I couldn't come here," she whispered. "Hurt too much? What about now?" the waitress asked. The girl brushed her fingers across the dried paint. "Now, I think I'm ready." She picked up a paintbrush, her hand shaking but determined, and dipped it into fresh color. The waitress stood beside her, quietly witnessing a moment more powerful than words. With one gentle stroke, the daughter completed the first line her mother had left behind. New memory, a new beginning. The waitress smiled softly. "You're stronger than you think." The daughter looked at her, eyes red, but full of gratitude, "Only because you stayed." And in that moment, the waitress realized something. This wasn't just a job anymore. She had become the anchor the girl never had, and the billionaire knew it too, because behind the doorway, unseen by both of them, he stood watching with tears forming in his eyes. That evening, long after the mansion had quieted down and the staff had gone to their quarters, the billionaire sent a message through his head of security, "Ask the waitress to meet me in the study." The waitress felt her stomach twist. Had she done something wrong? Did someone complain? Was she about to be fired? She wiped her hands on her apron, steadied her breath, and walked down the silent corridor toward the massive oak doors of the billionaire's private study. She knocked softly. "Come in," he said. The room smelled faintly of old books and expensive cigars, though none had been touched in months. The billionaire sat behind his desk, but this time, he wasn't surrounded by business files, contracts, or spreadsheets. He was sitting there with nothing but a framed photo of his daughter and her mother, a picture she hadn't looked at since the funeral. "Sit," he said gently. The waitress hesitated, then did as told. The billionaire didn't speak at first. He just studied her, the young woman who walked into his mansion as a stranger and somehow became the person who restored the one thing he cherished most, his daughter. Finally, he leaned forward. "I've been thinking," he began slowly. "My daughter. She has changed more in these weeks than she has in the last 3 years." The waitress lowered her gaze. "I'm glad she's doing better, sir," he exhaled deeply. "I owe you more than gratitude. You stepped into chaos, and instead of running, you brought peace. You gave her trust, stability, hope." His voice cracked slightly, something she never expected from a man like him. The waitress remained quiet. The billionaire stood up and walked toward the cut window overlooking the city. "Lights? I've built empires," he murmured. "I thought I could solve anything with money. But when it came to the one person I loved most, I failed her, and you succeeded." He turned back to her. "I want to offer you something." Her heart skipped. "A raise? A permanent position? Something bigger," he continued. "I want you to stay, not as staff, not as help, but as her mentor, her companion, her emotional anchor, the person she trusts most in this world." The waitress blinked, unsure if she heard correctly. "Sir, I'm just a waitress." "No," he said firmly. "You're the first person who truly understood her. The first person she lets near her heart." He walked toward his desk drawer and pulled out a folder thick, official, embossed with the family seal. I'm prepared to offer you a contract, full-time, private role, with full authority to guide her, support her, accompany her. Salary, whatever you ask, accommodations, education benefits, travel options, all included." She stared, speechless. This wasn't a job offer, it was a life-changing opportunity. But he wasn't finished. "I know this is a lot," he said. "But my daughter doesn't attach easily. Yet she has attached to you. And if you leave now, I'm afraid it will break her again. I can't let that happen." The waitress swallowed hard. "Sir, I care about her. Truly. But are you sure I'm the right choice?" He smiled. Not the smile of a billionaire, but of a father finally feeling relief. "She chose you," he said. "And that's all the proof I need." At that moment, the door opened slightly. The billionaire's daughter stood there in her pajamas. Clutching a small blanket, her eyes were puffy from crying. But not sad tears, quiet, vulnerable tears. "Are you leaving?" she whispered. The waitress froze. The billionaire stepped aside, letting the moment speak for itself. The daughter walked across the room, stood in front of the waitress, and held her hand tightly. "I don't want you to go." Her voice cracked, pure. Unfiltered emotion. "You're the only one who didn't give up on me." The waitress felt her throat tighten, warmth spreading across her chest. She squeezed the girl's hand. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. The daughter closed her eyes in relief, and the billionaire exhaled, finally at peace. But the real surprise came next, because the billionaire wasn't offering her just a job. He had one more life-changing decision waiting, and it was bigger than anything she could have imagined. The next morning, the mansion felt different, calmer, softer, as the walls themselves finally breathed after years of holding grief inside. The waitress woke early, still unsure if last night had been real. The billionaire's offer, the daughter's plea, the emotion in that study. It felt like a dream, but the weight of it sat in her chest like a warm stone. She walked downstairs, and before she even entered the dining hall, she heard the sound of quiet humming. The daughter. She was sitting at the table, legs folded under her, brushing her doll's hair with gentle, careful strokes, the same doll she once ripped apart during a breakdown when she saw the waitress. Her entire face lit up. "You're still here?" she whispered, as if afraid the moment might vanish. "I told you." The waitress smiled softly. "I'm not going anywhere." The girl rushed to her and hugged her tightly, not the desperate, panicked hug of someone clinging to survival, but the warm embrace of someone finally feeling safe. The billionaire entered moments later, coffee mug in hand. Observing them quietly, he didn't interrupt, he didn't speak, he just watched, the way a father watches a miracle unfold right in front of him. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I have something important to discuss," he said. The waitress straightened, but to her surprise, he wasn't talking to her. He knelt beside his daughter. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "I need to ask you something. Something very important." The daughter tilted her head. "Do you want her to stay with us? Not just as staff, but as part of this family circle. Someone who will be with you every step of your healing. Someone you trust. Completely?" The girl didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said immediately. "What if it means she'll have her own room here? What if she'll travel with us, join your appointments, help you through school? Be your support person officially?" The girl gripped the waitress's hand even tighter. "That's what I want, Dad." The billionaire nodded and stood up slowly. He turned to the waitress. "I want you to listen carefully," he said. The room fell silent. "I'm not offering you a job. Anymore?" Her heart skipped. "I'm offering you a role in this home. A permanent position in my daughter's life. Her emotional guardian, her mentor, her trusted companion." He paused, letting the words settle. "This isn't employment. This is responsibility, purpose, commitment." The waitress exhaled shakily. "Sir, I don't know if I'm capable of something so big." "You already proved you are," he said softly. "Not through qualifications, not through degrees, through heart." He walked to his desk and returned with a small velvet box. This belonged to her. "Mother," he said. The waitress froze. "I don't give it." Lightly, he continued. "But You've earned it. He opened the box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, simple, elegant, and clearly precious. A charm hung from it, a small golden feather, the exact shape the daughter loved to draw. The daughter gasped softly, "Mama's bracelet." The billionaire held it out to the waitress. "I want you to have this," he said, "as a symbol of trust, of gratitude, of your role in helping my daughter become whole again." The waitress's eyes filled. "I can't accept this," she whispered, but the daughter stepped forward, her small hands gently pushing the waitress's wrist. "Forward. Please wear it," she said softly. "Mom would have liked you." That broke her tears welled in the waitress's eyes as the billionaire clasped the bracelet around her wrist. The metal was warm, almost alive, carrying the memory of the woman who once held this family together. The waitress looked at the girl, her eyes shining with hope, then at the billionaire, his gaze steady, sincere, grateful beyond words. She took a deep breath. "I accept," she whispered. The daughter wrapped her arms around her waist. Burying her face in her apron, the billionaire finally let out the breath he had been holding for years. For the first time, this house was a home again, and the waitress who entered as a nobody now stood at the center of a family she never expected to belong to. A simple job had become a calling. A broken girl found her light again, and a father regained the daughter he thought he had lost forever. The impossible had truly happened.